Hello class, welcome to lesson 5.4, which is all about solving compound inequalities. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to solve compound inequalities containing the word and graph their solution set. And you should also be able to solve compound inequalities containing the word or and graph their solution set. First of all, a compound inequality is when you have two inequalities and they are joined together by the words and, or it's joined together by the word and. An intersection is where the two different inequalities overlap, okay? Where do those two graphs on the number line intersect? A union is two inequalities with the word or, and one of the inequalities is true. So let's jump into our first example. We have y minus 3 is greater than or equal to negative 11, and y minus 3 is less than or equal to negative 8. So this is a compound inequality. It's joined together by the word and. So the way that you solve these is you solve both inequalities. So let's start by doing that. We have y minus 3 is greater than or equal to 11. So I'm going to add 3 on both sides in order to get y by itself. So I have y is greater than or equal to negative 11 plus 3 gives me a negative 8. I carry down this word and I keep solving. So I have y minus 3 is less than or equal to negative 8. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. I have y is less than or equal to negative 5. Now what I do is I go and I graph these. So I have y is greater than or equal to negative 8. So I put a closed circle at negative 8 and I go that way. And then I have y is less than or equal to negative 5. So I do a closed circle at negative 5. And which way is it going? Where's y less than negative 5? That's going to the left. And so the way that you finish graphing these is I only care about the part where they overlap. I only care about the intersection. So I can erase this part of the graph and erase this part of the graph because I want my answer to be greater than negative 8 and less than negative 5. So my final answer would be negative 8, and then this part in between ends at negative 5. And that would be the solution to 1a. What if we look over at 1b? We have 6 is less than or equal to r plus 7 is less than 10. So the way this works is you kind of do a double, tee it up. We have an r variable in the middle. We want to get that by itself, and the way we get that by itself is by subtracting 7. And just like with teeing it up, you need to make sure that both sides of the t have that same thing. Well, with inequalities, compound inequalities, you have to make sure you do it in all of those spaces, okay? So the t, I know some of you don't like it, but it gives you the nice visual to make sure you remember to subtract 7 or whatever number everywhere. So we have 6 minus 7, it's a negative 1. We carry down our inequality symbol is less than or equal to. We're left with r is less than, and then 10 minus 7 is 3. So the way that I graph that one, I go to negative 1, and it's less than or equal to. We're looking for r is greater than that, but we will also want our r to be less than 3. So I have an open circle. And I know I'm looking for numbers that are greater than negative 1, but also less than 3. So that would be the answer for 1b. Go ahead and take a look at this problem on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you determined that negative 1 is less than x is less than 7. Right? If you have questions about that, be sure to ask. Okay, let's look at a word problem. We have a ski resort that has several types of hotel rooms and cabins. The hotel rooms cost at most $89 per night. Okay, so at most $89 per night. And the cabins cost at least $109 per night. Write and graph a compound inequality that describes the amount a guest would pay per night at the resort. So let's assume that the guest is only going to rent, one type of room. So if they rent a hotel room, we have our cost per night. We're going to just say N is less than or equal to 89, right? Because if the hotel rooms are at most $89, that means that hotel room is not going to cost more than $89. So I have my first inequality. Or they could rent a cabin, which costs at least $109 per night. Okay, so those would be my two inequalities. N is either going to be less than or equal to 89, or if they get the cabin, it's going to be at least $109 per night, so it's going to be greater than 109. So now what I do is I go through and I graph that on my number line. So I have, let's just say this is like 85, 90, 95, 100, 105, 110, and we have 89. We'll say is right about there. And N is less than 89. That means this is going to point out in this direction. And then if I have N is greater than or equal to 109, that's going to point the other direction. So you can see you have two inequalities that point in opposite directions, and that's okay. Go ahead and take a look at this next problem on your own, see how you do. Hopefully you determine C is less than or equal to 65, or C is greater than or equal to 80. Alright, let's take a look at example 3. We have A plus 1 is less than 4, or A minus 1 is greater than or equal to 3. So again, we tee it up and we solve like normal. So A is less than 3. Carry down our word. Solve the next one. So I'm left with A is less than 3, or A is greater than or equal to 4. So then all I have to do is find where's A less than 3. I would have my arrow pointing this direction. And then if I have A is greater than or equal to 4, and I have a closed circle pointing this direction. And that would be my answer for 1A. Now if I were to look at part B, I have X is less than or equal to 9. So that one's already solved. And I carry down the word or. But I have to finish solving the other one. So I have 2 plus 4x is less than 10. So I'm going to subtract 2 because I want to try to get my variable by itself. So 4x is less than 8. And then to finish getting my variable by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 4. I'm left with x is less than 2. So I have x is less than or equal to 9, or x is less than 2. So the way that graph looks is I go, and I have x is less than 2. It's going to point in this direction. If I have x is less than or equal to 9, x is less than or equal to 9, that's going to go this way. If you look, they overlap. My x is less than or equal to 9 includes the number 2 because 2 is less than 9. But if you look at our other inequality, that one didn't include 2. So when I graphed, I still went through 2. That means my final answer, since there's an overlap and it closes that open circle, it takes care of that open circle, my final answer is x is less than or equal to 9. Okay? Since this graph filled in the open circle from this one, it finished the graph, and I now have this as my answer. Go ahead and try this one on your own, see how you do. Hopefully for your last answer you got x is greater than -5. I put the work on the right hand side to hopefully help you in case you were confused. But that is all I have for this lesson. If you have any questions at all, please be sure to ask. I know it can be a little bit tricky, but I hope you guys are having a fantastic day.